As we begin this video, please make sure to copy these lines of CSS from my repository and copy them into your index.css so that whatever we're going to be building in this video is going to behave as you would expect it to behave. The repository is linked in the description and it is called HTML CSS YT. And now would you look at that, we are on the 11th. Yes, we are on the 11th and final project, which is going to be our tech website. And it's very simple in design and it does have a bit of functionality, and we are going to be doing that as well. So this is the entire website that we're going to be building, as you can see, looking very nice. So let's go ahead and let's begin this. First of all, I'm going to get all the images that we're going to need, and then I'm going to be placing them inside a folder so that when you clone the folder, when you clone the repository, then you're going to have access to the images. So let me first do that and then we can begin. So inside my workspace, I've created a new folder called Project 11 Techie. And inside here, I have an images folder that contains all the images that we're going to be using in this project. And then now the first thing that I want to do is create an index.html file. So index.html. And then right inside here, once again, I'm going to create a styles.css. So styles.css. And then inside my index.html, what I'm going to do is just say exclamation and enter. And then I'm going to link my global style sheet /index.css. And then I'm going to link my other style sheet, which is styles.css. And then inside here, I'm just going to leave a title that says Project 11 and just set this to techie like so. And then inside here, we're going to have a header, and inside here, we're going to have a div, which is going to be our logo. And then this logo is going to be linking back to our index.html. And the text is just going to say techie. And then below this header, we're going to have a section with a class of showcase. And then inside this section, we're going to have a div with a class of overlay, like so. And then inside this div with a class of overlay, we're going to have an h1 that says coffee, cakes, and code. And then below this h1, we're going to have a paragraph that says this. So let me just copy it and paste it inside here. You can pause the video and write it in. And then below this, we're going to have a button with a class of .btn. And then this is going to say show me how. Okay, so we're going to have this, and I'm going to save this and open this up with live server. And then this is what we're going to have on the website. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just place this to the right and then place this to the left, so that we're going to have this and we can begin styling this out. So let me first check something. Okay, so the body doesn't have a default background color, so that's okay. So now what we're going to do is, so we're going to create a rectangle, and then we're going to position that rectangle absolute, and then we're going to give it a linear gradient, and then we're going to blur it out, which is going to give this background this kind of blue and purple background. So let's start by just styling our header first of all. So I'm going to say that for the header, the first thing that I want to do is position this as absolute, like so, which is going to do that. And then I'm going to set the width to 100%. And then I want to access the header and the anchor tag inside, which is our logo. And then I want to say font weight, set this to bold, and then font size, set this to 2 rem, and then change the color into white, and then remove the underline that it has because it's a link. So I'm going to say text declaration none. Okay, so we're going to have that. And then let's go inside the showcase, and the showcase is going to have a background color of, let me just grab it. So this one right here is going to have, let's see, where is it? This one is going to be RGBA, this one. So just copy it and paste it inside here. So it has an opacity of 0.87. Save this, and what we should see on the screen is something like this. Okay, and then now what I want to do is set the height to calculate 100 viewport heights minus 0.1 pixels, so that the returned height is evaluated in pixels. So I'm going to save this, and then this is what we're going to have on the screen. And then I want to grab this text and move it to the center. So this text is inside a class of overlay, like so. Oops. So I'm going to say display flex and then align in type center and justify content to the center. and then change the flex direction into column like so, and then set the same height here. So height, paste it here, and then this is going to move to the center. And then inside here, let me add a padding of 0 on the top and bottom and 1.5 rem on the left and right to push it inwards. And then right below this, let me also say text align center, which is going to align the text to the center. Okay, and then back inside the header, let me add a padding a bit. So padding of 1 rem on the top and bottom and 1.5 rem on the left and right to push it inwards. Okay, and then let's grab this h1 which is inside the overlay. So for the dot showcase, for the dot overlay class, I want to access the h1, change this color into white, add a margin on the bottom, so margin bottom 1 rem, and then let's say increase the font size to 2 rem. Is it 2 rem? Let's see how 2 rem looks like. Okay, and then we're going to increase it as we add our media queries. And then let's also access the paragraph. So showcase dot overlay paragraph, we're going to say change this color into hashtag FFF, change the font size into 0.9 rem, make it a bit smaller like so, and then add a margin on the bottom, so margin bottom of 1 rem. There we go, or let's say 2 rem. And then once you have that, let's access this btn class, which is going to be a global style. And then next, let's access this button, and we're going to create it as a global style because we're going to be reusing the classes. So right above, let's go above the header. Let's say that for the .btn, I want to say add a padding all round, or a padding of 0.65 rem on the top and bottom and 1.25 rem on the left and right. Remove the border that it has by default, so border none, and then also remove the outline, so outline none. And then I want to reduce the font size, so font size, to increase the font size, so font size, set this to 1 rem. Okay, and then let's set the background color here into our purple color, which is this one right here. So let me just grab this color right there, paste it inside. Oops, I didn't copy it. There we go. And then let's change the text color to white, so color hashtag FFF, and then let's see what we have. So we have this, and then let's add a border radius here, so border dash radius, change it to 0.625 rem, and then let's have a cursor of pointer, so cursor pointer. And then now let's scale this up so that the h1 is a bit bigger on larger screens. So let's go and add a media query here, and I'm going to say for at media for a min width of, let's say, 1024 pixels, 1024. Then I'm going to say that for the showcase and for the dot overlay for the h1, I want to increase this font size into 3 rem. Make it a bit bigger, and 3 rem is a bit too small, let's say 4 rem. Okay, so that we're going to have this. And now next, let's go ahead and add this rectangle. And now next, let's go ahead and add this rectangle with this linear gradient. So let me just grab the linear gradient, and it's going to be this one right here. So copy this linear gradient. And then now what I'm going to do is above the showcase, I'm going to create a class of bg dash gradient, and I'm going to give this a background of linear gradient like so. And then I'm going to create this class. So let's go ahead and create this class right above the showcase, and it is going to be a div with a class of bg gradient like so, and then just save it. And then you can go back inside here. And then now what I'm going to do is give this div, a width of 90%, and then I'm going to set the height into, let's say, 300 pixels, so that we're going to have this. And then I'm going to say filter, and we're going to blur it by 200 pixels. Okay, that's a bit too little, so 100. And then I want to position this as absolute, so position absolute like so, so that this is going to happen. And then I want to bring it downwards, so I'm going to say position to the top by 50%, and then transform and translate on the y-axis by minus 50%. And there we go. So that is going to be technically it's now on top of this, but we want the showcase to be above it. So we can do that by going inside the showcase here, inside the overlay, and setting the overlay to position relative. So position relative, and relative positioning has a higher z index than absolute positioning, so this is moved closer to the user, and we have that as our gradient, and we can scale it up, and this is what we're going to have. Would you look at that? Looking amazing. Okay, and then now let's go ahead and create our next section, which is going to be these articles that are grids. Okay, and you can see that they go all the way to the end. So in order to do that, then we're going to create a section here. So let's create a section below this showcase, and this section is going to be with a class of grid, like so. And then inside here we're going to have an article, and this article is going to have an image. This first image is coming from images/tutorials, and then below this we're going to have an h2 that says tutorials. Okay, so I'm going to style this out first, and then we're just going to do some copying and pasting. Okay, so when I save this, then you should see this appear right here. And now what I want to do is I want to position this h2 relative within this article. So what I'm going to do is right below this, I'm going to access the class of grid, and then I want to go inside the article, and then I want to give this article a position of relative, and then I want to go inside the grid, the article, and the h2, and I want to say position this h2 as absolute. Okay, and then what will happen is nothing really changes. Now I want to position it to the bottom right here. Okay, so I'm going to say position to the bottom by around 1 rem, so that it's not completely to the bottom, and then move it inwards just a bit by saying move it to the left by 1 rem, so that we're going to have this, and then change the text color to white, so color #FFF. And would you look at that, we already have our first grid. As simple as that, really. And then now what we want to do is go inside this class of grid and display it as a grid. So display grid with grid template columns to 1 fractional column on mobile screens. And then we're going to add a media query, so at about 768 pixels. So I'm going to say for a mean width of 768 pixels. Then this class is going to repeat twice, so repeat twice, and 1 fractional column each. And you'll notice that this is going to happen. And then for larger screens, then I want them to be 3 grids. So right around here I'm going to paste this in. And by the way, I don't need to repeat this because it is already a grid, because we have defined it on top. And then this is going to say repeat 3 times and 1 fractional column each. And you'll see that now this is going to be the 3rd grid. Okay, and now we can paste in our other grids. So right inside here I can grab this article, so copy this article, 1 2 3 and 4 and 5, those are 6. So this second one is going to say courses, then consultation. So this is going to say courses, then consultation, then web design, then web development, and this is going to say programming. And then we need to change these icons. This should say programming, this should say web development. So web development, the first one, not the web development 2. And then this should say web design, so the first one once again. And then this should say consultation, and then this should say courses. There we go. So these are our images that we have in our images folder, so you're going to have access to them when you clone the repository. So when I save this, now look what happens on the screen. So now we have our text right here. So our text is technically here, you can see it right here, and then this other one is right here, so courses, then consultation. And the reason why it behaves like that is because the images are of different widths. As you can see, this image is bigger than the rest of them. So what we need to do now is, and I can even scale this down on mobile. On mobile it looks okay, as you can see, right? On mobile it is completely fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go where we have our articles, and I'm going to go grab our images. So inside here, so for the articles I want to grab the images, and I'm going to set the images to a height of, let's say, 300 pixels. How does that look? Okay, there we go. And then on larger screens, how does this look? Probably we're going to scale them up on larger screens, but what I want to do is I want them to have an object fit of cover, so that they're just going to be like zoomed in and they're not going to stretch out, because as you can see they're a bit stretchy, right? So I'm going to say object fit and set this into cover, so that now they're going to zoom in and they're just going to take up the entire space like so. Okay, fantasy, that's looking okay actually. And then now what we're going to do is, let me see something. Probably just increase the height of the images on larger screens. So let me copy this, and right around here I'm going to remove this because we've already defined it on top, and I'm going to increase this height to 400 pixels. So right around here, okay, you can see that the height increases to 400 pixels, and there we go. Okay, probably this isn't really good, so let's say 350. Okay, so that we're going to have this. Okay, that's looking much better. So this spacing right here, I think, is on the articles. Why did I have, is it because of this position relative? So what I'm going to do is, let me do something cheesy here where I'm going to say margin top, and I'm going to say minus 0.5 rem, minus 0.5 rem. Is that going to push it upwards? There we go. So you can become very cheesy with CSS as well. As you can see, that's looking much better. I mean, yeah, right? Okay, and then the next section we're going to create is the software solutions, which is going to have this cool looking underline, and then we're going to have a grid once again, but this grid is a bit different from the one on top, being that it has some bit of grid gap. So let's go ahead and create that section. So we can go inside here, and below this section is the class of grid. So here I'm going to create another section. Okay, and then this section I'm just going to call this a class of, let's say, section -2, and then inside here we're going to have an h2 that says software solutions, and then below this we're going to have a div with a class of underline, which is going to be our underline div right here, and then we're going to have our articles. So below this we're going to have a div with a class of cards, and then each of these div is going to have an article, and the first thing is going to be the image. Let me see how this looks. Okay, so the image, and then this one. The source for this is going to be /images/ and it is called SAS, so software as a service, SAAS.jpg. And then below this image we're going to have a div which is going to have this other text. So we're going to have an h3 that says software as a service, and then below this h3 we're going to have some dummy text, so lorem, let's just say lorem 15 like so, and then below this we're going to have a button which is going to say read case study. This button I'm going to call this btn-white, and I'm just going to say read case study like so. And you probably want to link this into other parts of your website if you want, so you can just do that by changing this into an anchor tag. So let me save this, and then let's see what we have on the screen. And we have this. So obviously we're going to start out one of them first of all, and then we're going to do the rest. So inside here I want to go into section 2. So right above this I'm going to say that for the dot section 2 I'm going to say add a padding of 4 rem on the top and bottom and 1.5 rem on the left and right. Add a background color of #333, so that we're going to have this. Okay, now the images, because I exported them from Figma, they have this kind of edge right here, this white edge, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a border radius on top of the images. And first of all, let me add the section 2. Let me access the h2. Let me say give this color of white and change the font size into 2 rem. Okay, and then let's add a margin on the bottom, so margin bottom of 1 rem. And then let's add the underline, so the section 2, and then let's access the class of underline. Let's give this a width of 4 rem, and then a height of 2 pixels, and then a background color of white. Okay, so section 2 underline doesn't work, so section 2 class underline, is that correct? Dot underline. Okay, so why can't I see it? A height of 2 pixels is too small. Let's say 4. Oh, here it is. Let's add a margin bottom of 3 rem to push it away from this image. There we go. And then let's increase the width to about 7 rem. How does that look? Okay, And then what we need to do is just reduce this height to about 2 pixels, make it a bit thinner, or let's say 2.5. Okay, and then let's go inside these articles. So inside the class of cards and inside the articles, so I want to access the class of cards and then the articles, and then the image I want to say border radius of, let's say, 3 rem on the top left, 3 rem on the top right, and then 0 on the bottom right and 0 on the bottom left. So we're going to have this 3 rem is a bit big, let's say 2.5 rem, or let's say 2 rem. How does that look? Yeah, 2 rem is manageable. So we're going to have this, and then remember that inside the article we also have a div which holds our text. So inside the article I want to access the div, and then I want to say change this color into white, and then add a padding all round of 1.25 rem to push the content inwards just a bit. And then inside the div we want to access the h3, and then say margin bottom of 1 rem, and then let's access the paragraph. So copy this downwards, access the paragraph, and then let's say that for the paragraph I want a font size of 0.9 rem and a margin bottom of 2 rem pushed away from the button. And then now let's access the button. So copy this once again and access the button, and then let's say that for the button, let me just copy these styles on top for this one, copy the styles and paste them inside here. And then we're going to change this color into white, so hashtag FFF, and then we're going to change the text color into a dark gray, which is 111827. So save this, and we're going to have this for our button. Okay, fantastic. And then what I want to do is these articles have a lighter background color, which is the divs, really, not the articles. So inside the divs, which is this one right here, I want to add a background color. So background color, set this into about, let's say, let me see how 999 looks. That is too light. So let's move this upwards a bit. Sorry, not upwards but downwards, and then change this into hexa values. So let's say 31 is a bit dark, so let's say 444. Okay, that's much more manageable. And then notice that the reason, by the way, we have these kind of small spaces is because of the image. Okay, it's because of how I exported the image. So in order to remove this, then let's add a negative margin on top of this div. So I'm going to say margin top of minus 0.5 rem, 0.5 rem, which is going to push it upwards just a bit so that it is attached to this image. And then let's add a border radius on the bottom of this div to make it just a bit curved, just like the image on top. So I'm going to say border radius of 0 and 0 on the top left and top right, and then 2 rem on the bottom right and 2 rem on the bottom left, which are the values that we added on the image. So we're going to have this. Would you look at that? That is looking much better. And then once we have this, then we can just go ahead and copy paste this article. So go inside this article, paste it 1 2 3 4 5, and then we can change this text. So the first one is software as a service, the second one is testing as a service, and the image is TAAS, and this is testing as a service. And then the third one is cloud services, so the image is called cloud services. Change this h3 into cloud services. Okay, and then the fourth one is web design. So web design, now we're going to be using web design 2, and then change this h3 into web design. And then the next one is web development, and final web hosting. So web development, we're going to be using the second image, so web development -2, and then this is going to say web development, and then this is going to say web hosting, so web hosting. Okay, change this into web hosting. And did I miss something? How many articles are there? I think should be fine. So 1 2 3 4 5, and 1 is missing. This is testing, this is cloud. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I started with testing as a service. Oh, I changed the first article. Sorry, my bad. This is software as a service, this is software. There we go. So save this, and we should have this on the screen. Let's save it. And when it reloads, then we have this. Okay. And then now what we're going to do is just scale it up by displaying this as a grid. So inside our styles.css, I'm going to go inside the cards class. So right above this one, I'm going to say that for the cards class, I want this to display as a grid with grid template columns. For mobile screens, first of all, they're going to be one fractional column each with a grid gap of 1.25 rem. And we're going to have this slight grid gap for each of the articles. And then we're going to scale this up by changing this property here. So at about 768 pixels, then I want to access the cards class and change this into to repeat twice and one fractional column. And I want to show you something interesting now that I've just seen it. Okay, so you can see right there. Now when you're accessing multiple elements, you can see that I'm displaying the grid, which is our top grid, using this same property, and then the cards class using this same property. So if I don't want to keep on repeating this, then I can just go ahead here, place a comma, and say that for the cards class, and save it. So it's going to, so this property is going to apply on the grid as well as on the cards. And we're going to have this, as you can see, nothing breaks. And then we can do the same thing right here by just placing a comma and saying for the cards class. And then when I increase it, it's going to turn into 3 grids right around there. Okay, would you look at that? That's looking quite nice. It does look quite nice. And then probably what you can do is just increase the size of this paragraph on larger screens. So I'm going to say, how did I do it on top? The cards article div p. So I'm going to go below this and access this class, and I'm going to say, let's say the font size back to 1 rem. So set it back to 1 rem, and probably, you know what, let me really reduce the opacity for this paragraph. So on top of this, I'm going to say set the opacity to 0.75, make it just a bit grayed out. And then another thing that you can do is just increase the size of this h3 on larger screen. So you can just copy this class and say right above here, you can see that increase the font size to 1.5 rem. How big is that? Yeah, that is much better. That is much better. Would you look at that? And then the next section we're going to create is our testimonial sections. And no, I apologize, we're not going to create this slider. This is just going to be for the UI. So let's create this section. And I'm going to create a section right below this one. And I'm going to create a section with a class of testimonials, like so. And then inside here, we're going to have another h2 that says what our clients say. What is it? What our clients say about us. And then below this, we're going to have a div with a class of underline, which is going to be our underline. And yes, we have created this class, but it is not going to appear in our HTML because the way we are styling it only for this particular section. Where is it? Only for this particular section. So for the next section, because the underline is a bit different, it is now darker in color and no longer white, then we're going to style it differently. That's why this style does not apply to this section. Okay, however, if I just reference this as underline, what you'll notice is that in our HTML right inside here, we increase the space because the underline also appears. And we can do that, but I don't want to do that because it's going to involve a lot of playing around with specificity, which usually isn't really a good idea. Okay, and then once we have this, then what we're going to do is we're going to have a div, and then this div is going to have a button, and then this first button is going to be an image that comes from /images/arrow left, like so. And then we're going to have an article, and not really an article, but a div with a class of testimonials -inner, which is going to have articles, and these articles are now going to be this section here and this other testimonial. And so the way we want to structure it is we want to add this image and then add these 2 items as list items. So we're going to have our first image here, which comes from /images/profile1, and then we're going to have a UL, and then inside this UL we're going to have 2 list items. So copy this down, and then this one says a name of a person here, and then this one below says front end, web developer. So what I want to do is grab these two and place them inside another div like so, and then outside of this div I'm going to have a paragraph that says this text. So let me just copy this text right here and paste it in. So you might be wondering why I'm using a div, an article, div, article. It's because I like alternating them so that I know in which section I am working in. Okay, and you remember that an article can be the parent of a div and a div can be the parent of an article. It doesn't really matter. So once we have this is the testimonials inner, then we want to copy this class one more time. This article, sorry, we want to copy it one more time. So right around here, change this into profile 2, change this into the name of a person, and then this is developer of front end, and then the text is just going to remain the same. And then at the end of this, we want to add in our second arrow, which is going to be, oops, didn't mean to do that. So we're just going to copy this button, and at the end of this div, the testimonials inner, we're going to place in this and change this into arrow right dot svg, and then we're going to give this div a class of testimonials dash container, so that we can style it differently. So save this and let's see what we have on the screen. Okay, so we have a really big image, obviously, and then we have these icons here and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's place this to the right, and I should mention that by default these icons are not going to be, the arrows are not going to be visible on mobile screens. So let's go inside here, let's go into before our media query, let's access the testimonials, change this to have a background color of white, and then add a padding of 4 rem on the top and bottom and 1.5 rem on the left and right. Push it inwards. And then what you want to do is access this h2 and push it to the center. So for the dot testimonials h2 class, I'm going to say text align center, and then change the color into hashtag 333, make it just a bit grayed out. And then we want to access the underline class inside here. So for the div with the class of underline, I'm going to do the very same thing that I did on top, which was for the underline class right here. So just copy this and paste it right here. And then now the background color of this is going to be 333 to make it darker. And we're going to have this, and then I want to push it to the center by saying margin of 0 on the top, auto on the left and right, and then 3 rem on the bottom, so that I can remove this. And now it's going to be pushed to the center, and you know what, not 0 on the top really, but 2 rem on the top to push it away from this h2. And we're going to have that 2 rem is a bit big, let's say 1 rem. Okay, and then now let's access these buttons, which are these ones right here. It's inside the testimonials, then testimonials container, and then the button. So below this we want to access the testimonials, and then the testimonials dash container, and then access the button, the buttons, and then just let it display none, which is going to hide them, as you can see. And then now let's go inside our articles, which is the testimonial inner, and then the articles. So just copy this, okay, and then access the articles, and then inside the articles I want to get the images so that I can reduce the width to about 2 rem. See how this looks. 2 rem too small, so 4 rem much bigger. There we go, so 4 rem. And then I want to access this first div inside here, okay, and I can do that by just going inside this article and saying that for the div inside here, then I want to say display flex, which is going to place the image and the text side by side like so. And then I'm going to say align item center and justify content to the start. And then once I have that, then I want to go into this UL, and then I want to add a bit of spacing on the left so that it pushes away from this image. So inside this div right below this, inside the UL, I want to say margin dash left of 1 rem. And then once we do that, then I want to go inside this first list item and change this into font bold. So just copy this, and it's becoming a bit long. I apologize because the class names were very long. So I want to say that for the list item, which is the first child, then I want to say change this font weight into bold, like so. Save this, and we're going to have this, and then change this text color into hashtag 333. Okay, so that we're going to have that, and then we're going to go into the second list item. So just copy this downwards here and change this into nth child and 2, and we're going to change this font size into 0.9 rem, so that we're going to have that. Okay, and probably make this to have to be just a bit lighter by reducing the opacity. So I'm going to say opacity, set this into 0.75. So there we go. Okay, and now let's go ahead and deal with our paragraph, and our paragraph is inside the article and then the paragraph. So inside the article div, so we're going to copy this downwards here, article div, and access the paragraph and say reduce the font size to 0.9 rem, like so, and then add a margin on top. So margin top of, let's say, 1 rem to push it away from this content. And is this correct? It is not correct because the paragraph is not inside the div, so remove this, and there we go. Okay, and then now what I want to do is access this entire article so that I can add a background color on it of gray. So we're going to go back to the top, we're going to copy this, paste it on top, and then we're going to say background color, set this into hashtag f1, so that we're going to have this, so a very slight gray, and then I'm going to add a border dash radius of 0.625 rem, 0.625 rem. Do I have a box shadow? I do have a box shadow, so we're going to say add a box shadow here of 2 pixels on the horizontal, 2 pixels on the vertical, 2 pixels on the blur, and RGBA. We're just going to do this, so let me change this into 0.2. See how this looks? Okay, very slight box shadow, looking nice. And then let's add a padding so that this content pushes inwards. So I'm going to say padding of 1.5 rem to push the content inwards. There we go. And then now what I'm going to do is inside this container. Okay, so inside this container, I'm going to place it upwards here. I'm going to say display this as a grid with grid template columns to repeat. Right here. So I'm going to say 1 fractional column, and then add a grid gap of 1 rem to push it away from each of these. But that doesn't work, and it doesn't work. Why? Testimonials inner, and this should say testimonials, not container. Wait, what did I do? Testimonials container is this one. What am I doing here? Testimonial container. So this should say testimonials inner, and then I can grab this and push it downwards. Let me place it. How does it start? Testimonials container, then the button, then testimonials inner, so below this button. Okay, so you can see that now this is separated out and we have our testimonial section. So there we go. And then now what we need to do is just scale it up. So right at around medium screens, then I want to add in this to be 2 grids. So I'm going to copy, what did I do here? I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to add a media query, and right here I'm going to say that I can remove this and I can remove this. And remember how we did it on top right here, because this is still the same property that we're changing. So what I'm going to do is just remove this and then grab this class and add a comma and paste it in. Okay, as simple as that, really. And we're going to have that. Look at that, now we have 2 grids. And then now what we need to do is on larger screens, so right around here we want to add in our 2 arrows, the left arrow and the right arrow. So what I'm going to do is, let me see where I disable the buttons, and I disable them here. So copy this, and then at about 1024 pixels, so right here I'm going to say these ones are now going to say display block. There we go. So now we have our button here, and I don't see our second button. Where is our second button? Arrow right dot, oh, this is SVG, not PNG, SVG. And we should have it right there. Okay, so now let's figure out this layout. This layout is going to be, or it might be a bit tricky. So now what we want to do is this button and this div, which is the testimonials container, and then this button. So we are going to go inside the testimonials container, and then we're going to say display it as a flexbox. So right around here, we're going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it right around here. And you know what, it's the parent of the button, so grab this and paste it on top, and I'm going to say display flex. Let's see what happens. Okay, would you look at that? So we already have the design already almost. And then now what I want to do is I want to say align it at center so that these buttons don't go all the way to the top. So I'm going to say align it at center, like so. And then we can just say justifying content to space between, justify content to space between. Okay. And then now let's limit these articles so that they don't go all the way to the end by just going where we can just copy this. And then below this, we can access the articles, and you can set here a max width of around 400 pixels. Okay, so that we're going to have that. And our buttons go all the way to the end. Do I want them to go all the way to the end? No, I don't. So let's add a max width on the container by saying max width here, set this to 1100 pixels. So that we're going to have this, and then push them to the center by setting a margin here of auto. And there we go. And then let's style out our buttons. So these buttons, I want them to just have a transparent background. So here I'm going to say background color, set this to transparent, and then remove the border, so border dash none. And then the outline, so remove the outline dash none. There we go. And then we can have a cursor pointer, so cursor pointer. There we go. And would you look at that? And now you can go ahead and try to add your own testimonials. Your own like slider, so that this moves to the left and to the right. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to grab this h2 and increase its size. So let me go where we have our h2, and it is should be where is it? Here, testimonials h2. Go to the bottom, and right above this, I'm going to say that I want to increase the font size. So font dash size, increase this to about 3 rem. And there we go. Would you look at that, looking fantastic? And now the next section that we're going to create is the ready to get started, which is going to have the h2 here and the same underline. Okay, so we're going to reuse a class probably. And then we're going to have our contact us button, which is insanely huge. So let's go inside here, and outside of this section with the class of testimonials, we're going to go and create another section here that says let me just call this section call to action, so CTA. And then inside here we're going to have an h2 that says ready to get started, with a question mark. And then below this we're going to have an underline, and you know what, I'm going to change this into underline dark so that I can go inside my CSS and I can find where I have my testimonials underline, and which is this one right here, the darker one, and change this into underline dash dark. Okay, which means that now I'm going to reuse this class right here. So when I save this and try to look at this, then we're going to have our underline right here. And of course I need to add the class of underline dark on this h2 as well. So let's go back inside our index.html, and on top right here we're going to change this into underline dash dark, so that the style is going to apply back inside here. Okay, and so once we have that, then let's go ahead and let's continue building up this section by just adding a button. So below this, right inside here, we're going to have a button, the class of btn, but we're going to scale it up. Okay, we're going to scale it up so that it's just bigger than the rest of these other buttons. So let's go ahead and let's style this section out. So it's a class of .cta. So I'm going to go right before our media query right here, and I'm going to say that for the .cta class, add a padding of 4 rem on the top and bottom and 1.5 rem on the left and right. And then I'm just going to say text align center, which is going to move all the text to the center. And then I want to add a background color of hashtag F1, which is a slight gray right there. And now let me change it into E5. That is much darker. And then let's get this h2. So for the .cta h2, let's make this a font size, not a font size really, but change the color into hashtag 333. And then I want to scale it up on bigger screens. So right at around here, where we're changing the testimonials h2, I can add a comma and say that for the .cta h2, then I also want it to have a font size of 3 rem, which is going to give this the same font size as this one. And then now all you need to do is just scale this button up. So on the bottom, or not on the bottom really, but right below the CTA. I'm going to access the CTA and then the .btn class, and then I'm going to say transform, and I'm going to scale this up to, let's say, 4. How does that look? Okay, so 4 is a bit big, so let's say about 3.8. Let's set a margin of, let's say, 4 rem on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right. Okay, so this is the margin right here, and then let's add the padding on the button. So I'm going to say padding of, I had padding of 0.625 rem on the top and bottom, so let's make it 5 rem on the left and right. And there we go. So this is a bit bigger than the button that I have inside here. And you know what, this is a bold font, so let me make this font bold as well. So I'm going to say font weight, make this bold, like so. And you know what, I've just realized something. On small screens, it's going to do this. So what I want to do is I want to reduce this to about 2, so that when I check this out on a smaller screen, then it's going to do this, which is still too big. So I'm going to reduce the padding here, and you know what, I can just remove this padding from here, so that on small screens we're going to have this, and then I can remove this margin. I can set it back to 2 rem, or I think I can even just remove it altogether. Let me see. Okay, so this is how it's going to look on small screens, and then on larger screens, that's when I want this to be even bigger. So let me remove this, and then let's copy this, and let's go into 1024 pixels right below this, and then I'm going to say scale this up into 3.8, and then let's add a padding of 0.625 rem on the top and bottom, and 5 rem on the left and right. Let's add a margin of 4 rem on the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right, and we're going to have this. Would you look at that? Now for larger screens, and then for smaller screens we're going to have this. And then finally we're going to build our footer, which is a bit complicated, but not so complicated when you're using grid and flexbox. So let's go ahead and create our footer. We're going to use the semantic tag of footer. So we're going to create a footer with the class of footer, and then we're going to create how many divs? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to create 4 divs, and then each of these divs are going to have some content inside. So inside the first one, we're going to create a div inside here, and this div is just going to be an h2 that says techie. And then this second div is going to be an h2 that says services, and then below this h2 we're going to have a ul with the list items, and list items are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 of them, and each of them are going to have anchor tags. So let's just say hashtag, because they're not going to be linking anywhere. And then the text for this says tutorials and courses, courses and consultation and web design and web development and programming here. So programming. Okay, and then we're just going to copy in this div, copy this div, oops, paste it inside here, change this into software solutions. So software solutions, this one says software as a service, the second one says testing as a service, testing. This third one says cloud services. The fourth one says web design. So this last one is the one that's going to change into web hosting. Okay, and then we're going to have a form here, which is going to be a newsletter form. So this div, we're going to copy this div, paste it inside here, and then this h3 is going to say newsletter, and then inside here we're going to have a paragraph that says receive latest news, promotions and updates. So receive latest news, promotions and updates, and then we're going to create this form. So inside here we're not going to have a ul, instead we're going to have a form. So this form is not going to have an action because we're not submitting it anywhere, but you can, if you want to create a newsletter form, you can check out what is called button down, which is actually what runs my newsletter form as well. Oh, I should mention I do have a newsletter form. You can check out my website. And then we have a label here that says enter your email address. So a label, this is going to be a label for email that says enter your email address. And then below this, we're going to have an input with a type of email, like so, with a name of email, with an ID of email. And then we are going to say, does it have a placeholder? Yes, it does. So placeholder equals to your email address, and then set this to required. Okay, and then below this, we're going to have a button with a type of submit. So button with a type of submit with a class of btn, so that it takes the class of the buttons that says subscribe, like so. And then below this, we have this text. So inside here, I'm going to place it inside a small tag that says no spam and subscribe at any time. So no spam and subscribe at any time. Okay, and it says here powered by button down, but I'm not going to add in that text. And then below, outside now of this div, we're going to have another div here that says let's set it inside a paragraph that says copyright. And let me just show you something. If you want to add the copyright symbol in HTML, you can say ampersand copy and then comma, which is going to add the copyright symbol, and then say techie 2022. And then below this, you can have another paragraph that says all rights reserved. Okay, so that is going to be our footer, and then we can save this, and then we can begin styling this out. Okay, so let's go into our style sheet. So inside our style sheet, right on top of our media queries, I'm going to access the .footer class, and I'm going to add a padding of 4 rem on the top and bottom and 1.5 rem on the left and right. And then I'm going to add a background color of hashtag 111827. And then I'm going to change the text color inside into white by just adding the color of white. And then I'm going to say display grid with the grid template columns to be one fractional column by default. And then add a grid gap here of about 2 rem. Grid gap 2 rem. So when I save this, then let's check what we're going to have. We're going to have this on the screen. So I'm going to place this to the right so that we're going to have this. And now what I want to do is access each of these sections and then just tell them out just a bit. Okay, and we know that inside the footer, I have divs inside, and then I have h3s inside the footer. So I can say that for the h3s, the font size is going to be 1 rem. Reduce them massively, like so. And then inside the footer, I know I have a div, and then inside these divs, I have ULs with the list items and anchor tags. So what I want to do is say text decoration none to remove these underlines, and then change the color into white. Okay, and then I want to go inside each of the list items, and then I want to say margin dash bottom, set this to about, let's say 0.625 rem, which is 10 pixels. So save this, and we're going to have this. And you know what, below the h3, I also want to add some bit of margin so that this pushes downwards. So I'm going to say margin dash bottom, set this to 1 rem, like so. Okay, and then for each of the ULs, I want to first of all reduce the font size of the anchor tag. So let's say font dash size, set this to about 0.9 rem. Okay, and then probably let's add an opacity of 0.75 so that they are grayed out just a bit. There we go. And then what we can do is that we can add hover state on the anchor tags. So when we hover over them, the opacity is going to change back into 1 so that they're going to go back into white in color, as you can see. Okay, now what we need to do now is just go inside the ULs and push them inwards just a bit, because that is how I had it in the design. So inside here, just copy this downwards, and then I'm going to say padding on the left of 1 rem, which is going to push the ULs inwards just a bit, as you can see, much better. And then let's go inside our form. So right below this, I know I have a footer, and then a div, and then a form. And then what I want to do is, let's see. So inside here, I have a paragraph. So I want to access this paragraph first of all. So the paragraph, and then I'm going to say change this font size into 0.9 rem, 0.9 rem. And then below this paragraph, I now have the form. So I can say that for the footer div and then the form, then I can access the label. And for the label, I want to say display block so that it goes on a new line, display block, like so. So this is now the label. And then for the label, I'm going to say set a margin on top of 1 rem, and then reduce the font size to 0.9 rem, and then set a margin. Do I need a margin on the bottom? Yes. So margin dash bottom, set this to about 1 rem as well, or let me say 0.625 rem, 625 rem. Okay, and then let's access the input inside here. So for the input, I'm going to say set the width to 100%, which will make sure that this button is going to go into the next line. Okay, and then let's add the padding on the input, so 0.625 rem on the top and bottom and 1 rem on the left and right. And then let's change the font size of the input, so font dash size to 0.9 rem. And then we can access the placeholder. Let me see how this is styled out. So the input has a background color, a border color, sorry, but the background color is transparent. So inside here I can set the background color to transparent, and then I can set the border to 2 pixels, and solid, and hashtag this purple color. And then I can add a border radius of 0.625 rem. I apologize if you can hear some noise outside. And then when I save this, then we're going to have this. Okay, and then let's add a margin at the bottom to push away from this button. So margin bottom, let's say 1 rem. Okay, and then let's access the input placeholder. We can do that by just saying full colon twice and then placeholder, and then change the color of the placeholder. So let's say color to hashtag white, which is going to do that. And then let me add an opacity to the placeholder of 0.75 so that it is grayed out just a bit. So right around there. Okay, that is much better. And then now what I want to do is access this small tag here so that I can change it into a block element so that it goes on the next line, and then this button is going to remain on its own. So I can say that for the footer, div, form, and for the small tag, I'm just going to say display block. And we are going to have that, and then add a margin on top. So margin top of 1 rem. And would you look at that? That is our newsletter form. And then now what we need to do is just access the footer and then just keep on changing the grids and so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is in the footer, I already have this as a grid. Do I? Let me see. I already have it as a grid, right? So what I'm going to do is right at around here where we have our grids repeating twice, I'm going to add the dot footer here so that we're going to have this. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and so on and so forth. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a media query here, and you know what, I'm just going to add it here first of all for the dot footer. Let me see how that looks. So right around 1024 pixels, we're going to have that. And then for extra large screens, then I want this final one to go here. So I'm going to add another media query, and I'm going to say at media for a mean width. So for a mean width of about 1020, so no, not 1024, but 1280 pixels. Then I want to access the dot footer class, and I want to say grid template columns are going to be repeating 3 times and 1 fractional column each. And sorry, not even 3 times, but 4 times. So we are going to have this. Would you look at that? Looking amazing. And of course, what I need to do now, oh, you know what is happening? This is also a div. This is also a div within the footer. That's what I've just realized. Let me see. Yeah, this is also a div within the footer. So let's become cheeky and let's grab this div all the way up to right here, and then let's add a div with a class of footer dash inner, like so. Paste this in, and then now the footer inner div is the one that we're going to be displaying as a grid. Okay, you can see it breaks a bit, but that's okay because we can just go ahead back into our style sheet, change this into footer dash inner, and then go on top where we have this, change this into footer dash inner, and then on top of this changes into footer dash inner, and then we can go back on top right about here. We're going to add a class of dot footer dash inner, and then we're going to grab the grid here. So this grid, cut it out, and then just paste it in, and then save this, and we should have this. Would you look at that? looking amazing, still the same way. And there we go. Okay, and so now what I want to do is this final div, I want to push it to the center. So I'm going to give this div a class of copyright. So class equals to copyright, like so. And then I'm going to access it below my footer right here and access the div with a class of copyright. And I'm just going to say the text line center, which is going to move it to the center. And then I'm going to say margin top of 3 rem, push it away from all of this, and then change the text color opacity. So opacity, change this to 0.75, and then reduce the font size to 0.8 rem. Okay, and there we go. Would you look at that? This is a very cool looking website. It is very cool looking. Okay, so that is going to be our tech website. You can see we have added the background blur, and then we have added all of these in, and so on and so forth. And as promised, you can see that we have built each one of these projects using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And you have realized by now probably that each of those languages is powerful on its own, and it's more powerful when you're utilizing another language to supplement it. And if my speed was a bit fast, then I really do apologize, but I'm still learning to slow down just a bit. And yeah, I hope you learned something new, and I hope you can learn, you can build on each one of these projects, such as this one especially, because I did not build the mobile version for this. So I left this out as a challenge to you. And if you succeed, then please do tag me on Twitter, because I would love to see the solution. And so now I just want to mention that if you are really beginning in HTML and CSS, then I do have a Udemy course which you can check out, and I'm going to link it in the description as well. It is about a year old, and I do sound a bit different, so I hope you can tolerate my voice. So yeah, that is going to be it, and I hope you enjoyed all the challenges that we have done and all the projects, and I will see you in the next course or in the next video that I do create. Bye bye. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and ring the notification bell so that you're always going to be notified of when I upload a new video.